Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to talk to y'all about Oriental chainmail weaves. Now you can see here, unlike a lot of the European weaves that have a little bit of a grain to them, with the Oriental weaves there are rings that are laying flat, and then there are rings that are laying perpendicular. So if we have horizontal rings, we also have vertical rings, kind of joining them all together. In this one here is an example of the Oriental 6-in-1 or 12-in-1. This one would be considered a 12-in-1, I think. I guess because there are 12 rings, it's like doubled up. But if I had just used a thicker ring and only used one at each connector, there would have been 6 joins. At least that's how I understand the names, and that's the terms I've been using for about a decade now, and most of the other chainmailers that I talk to typically have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. And whenever they use the term, and I, presume that this is what they're talking about, more often than not, that is what they're talking about. So if you use a different name for it, I'd love to hear it. But it's less important the name and more important how you make it and what you're making out of it and that you're having fun. So now at its very core, an Oriental weave is going to be an open ring with a closed ring, or with 2 closed rings on it to do this one. So we have our large rings and our small rings. I find it lays a little bit cleaner if you use 2 different sizes. Here I'm using an 18 gauge 1/4 inch and 20 gauge 1/8 inch rings. There'll be links to all the different tools and materials down in the video description below. And if you're just starting into chainmail, I recommend opening up one of your larger rings, putting 2 closed small rings on it. I like going through and closing all my rings that are going to be closed first as kind of prep work, because then whenever we go and start weaving, we can just weave. We don't have to worry about prepping more rings. And so you can see we have this larger ring closed and these 2 small closed isolated off to the side. I'm going to pick up another ring and I'm going to thread it through these 2 small ones. And then I'm going to close it. I really love using this pattern to make extender chains. And now you can see its 2 little rings are just hanging down. And so we'll just kind of step up a ring and just repeat that over and over again. And I feel like that makes a very beautiful but simplistic design. Now also in a lot of my tutorials I use saw cut rings. This ring here is machine cut, and you can kind of see the difference. Let me show you here. I have a saw cut ring that we cut a little earlier today. Now this is a different metal type and a different gauge. So I'm sorry, I told you wrong. I said that this is a 18 gauge. This is actually a 16 gauge. This one is an 18 gauge. So you can see it's a little bit thinner. But where that saw cut was, it's a nice flush meeting. Like you can barely see the little, if it weren't, misaligned, you would barely be able to tell that it was there. Whereas on the machine cut, you can see there's that little bit of a pinch going on. So whenever I'm investing in rings, I usually always try to go with saw cut, just because it gives you a more seamless final result. Because no matter how straight I try to butt that up, there's still going to be the pinched side and the flat side. But for demonstration purposes, they still work. I just wanted to kind of point that out. Because used to, like whenever I first started, it saves a couple cents per ring to go with machine cut. But the difference that it makes in the end result, as soon as I was able to start investing more in my materials, I bumped it up to saw cut and I've never gone back, if I can help it. So we would just continue along like that to do this. I guess it's a 2-1 chain, or could be. And then I'm going to close it. It can get pretty confusing whenever you start considering all the different names that all the different chainmailers seem to call these stuff. So, and then whenever you want to cap off the weave, I add a ring that doesn't have any closed smaller rings on it. Then I'm going to close it. And so that's a really nice, super simple first chainmail project. You would just kind of continue that around and then attach a clasp to one end. And then you could wear it as a bracelet, you could make it as a necklace, you could wear them as earrings, just however you like. But I'm going to set this down because now we can start considering the different ways that we could expand this. And that's if we wanted to end up with a big sheet project like this. So we could bring it around and have where it's a little bit more of a grid. And this would be an Oriental 4-in-1. Because, you know, if this ring here had another, like if it were a square of 9 instead of a rectangle of 6, it would have a ring here, a ring here, a ring here, and a ring here. So it would be a 4-in-1. But then to do the 6-in-1 or 12-in-1, we would just bring it around and they would sit like this. And so we would have a ring attachment here and here and here and here. So see how just that different kind of connection points, it offsets a little bit, helps it stack. Really, this one's perfect for doing a lot of different outfit and things, like anything where you need a triangle. I always do the what's this, the 6-in-1. Now it does make it difficult to get a perfectly squared off piece though, the way that you can with the 4-in-1. So there are different things to keep in mind. And you can also merge pieces of 4-in-1 and 6-in-1 together. So like here, this is all 6-in-1 over here. If I wanted to transfer it into being 4-in-1, I would just start expanding this way like that and add little attachment points, boop, 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 right along there, and keep building it out this way. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. And really, the more you do this, the more you practice, the more familiar with it you'll become. Now here you can see, since we're doing a 12-in-1, it's very material dense, but I really do love the look of it. I have one open ring with 6 closed little rings on it. And I'm going to pick this up because I work really well with it in my hands. And I am going to just pick, I need 2 rings off of this one, and you'll notice there are 4 loose rings. I want to pick the rings that are closest to where I'm going to be hooking on to next. So for demonstration purposes, we'd hook through 1, 2, and then I'm going to be hooking onto this ring. So if I had hooked around these 2, there'd be some material in the way. And then I'm going to hook through 1 and 2, maybe. Can get kind of dense sometimes, but that's all right. And then I'm going to hook 2 from this one. 2 little rings from the next one over. There we are. And then I'm going to come in and close it. And so you can see that is how we would just build and expand row by row. Pretty time consuming, but again, if you're into that, it's totally worth it. And so this is the ring that we just added. So to keep continuing along, I'm going to be picking 2 rings off of it. I have another open ring with 6 closed on. And I do really like a nice tight aspect ratio, but it can get kind of tight. That's not redundant. So just fiddle around with your angle of insertion, you'll get the hang of it. So hooking 1 from this ring, 1 from this one, and 1 from this one. It's so descriptive. And then close. Now, if this were my final edge, I would only have that one set of two on there. See, like how on this one, I don't have any small rings that are not intertwined to some other large ring. And I find that saves myself the work of having to close more than what I need, but it also gives a nice finished edge, I think. So hooking through 1, 2, picking off these two, boop, boop, and then picking the two closest to my working ring off of that last one. And I wanted to finish this row, that way y'all could get a pretty good idea of what it is that we're doing. Boop, boop. Boop, boop. Whoop, I missed one. There we are. And then one last pair off of this one. There we go. And I'm going to close it. Now here on our last one, I had been working with an open with 6 closed on it. This one is open with, should only have 4 closed on it. So let me take off 2 extra that I have just sitting there. Because you can see, if we lay this down, there's only one little spot left. And so I'm going to be hooking 2 rings from each of the adjoining, like the kind of neighbor rings. There we are. And then these last 2. And I'm going to close it. And there we are, y'all. And we would just continue on adding more and more rows, more and more rings, until we have made the shape that we would like. Something like this could make a very beautiful necklace. I have made these before, and like this weave, and then hand sewed it over a bikini top, like a fabric bikini top, because you'll notice it's a very open weave. So it's nice for decorative, but it's not good for costumes and things that you're not going to be wearing a lining under, like if you're trying to keep it family friendly, that is. So that's always something to keep in mind. But I just whip stitch through each of these loops along the side, and we may do a tutorial about that later on. But you could also make a very beautiful hand flower or barefoot sandal out of something like this. So really you're just weaving your own fabric, so make it into whatever shape that you like, and then do with it whatever you will, and it's art. It's whatever you want it to be. So and also I like to open and close the large rings because I have an easier time weaving with them. Some folks will go through and close all the big rings and then open the small ones and weave it together that way. So again, there's a lot of different routes that you can go through to get this same final result. If y'all have any questions, comments, or ideas, I would love to hear from you down in the comment section. You can also tag me on Instagram or follow me on Facebook and post stuff to my wall. That way I can see what you make. If you enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the daily production of them, as well as participate in my giveaways, and my craft crates, and behind the scenes, and all the different things that we do here at Back to Earth Creations, please consider becoming a pledger on Patreon. Donations start at just $1, and the more you pledge, the more you get. And y'all really make it possible for us to keep doing these tutorials, so thank you guys so much. And until next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you around. Mwah. Bye!